It'll take a few seconds to get us going live. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Greetings, world, and greetings, 7-Spot. Boy, have we got a treat for you today. It is another virtual and extremely socially distant Sevens, and you've been waiting for it. I've been waiting for it, but we've got something really special today because it's a twofer. Not only is a virtual and socially distant Sevens, but it's also deep in the shed. I've told you before that what we're doing is going to be working with a lot of folks who are deep in the shed, and I've got a few programming notes that you'll see on Facebook 7-Spot on that very point, and it's just so we can introduce you to a few projects that we are going to be bringing along. But enough about me. It's not about me. Let's bring in Bruce Wilkins in Perth, I think. Let's bring him in here. There we go. Hello,
good morning,
Bruce.
Jim. Good morning.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
All right, that's great. I'm going to bring myself in as well. And here we go. There we go. I'm going to say good morning to you, and it's good afternoon to me, but you know what? It's your turn because I was on your Zoom call at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you got to watch me in my pajamas.
Well, the good news is it's only 9 minutes past, or it's only just gone 7 a.m. here, so we're right on time.
Yeah,
it's a balmy 11 degrees outside, which is all right. It's going to climb to 16 or something today. It is a bit of a couple of little storm fronts coming through. In fact, if you had got on 30 seconds earlier, there was a dirty, great big wind outside blowing, trying to blow my shed away, or my father-in-law's shed away. But we're good, ready to go.
Good. Well, as I've always said to everyone, this isn't about me. It's about the stories that our cars can tell. And what I wanted to do is introduce you to, I guess, to 7-Spot in the world. But you've got two projects on the go because you are involved with, as I read my programming, you are the secretary of the Sports Car Builders Club of Western Australia. And I'm wondering if you could take us for a little tour around your shed and show us the two projects you're on the go on, and then could you please just take a moment to sit down and tell us what the Sport Car Builders Club is about? Because I thought when I first called you that it's about a bunch of blokes helping each other build their cars. But you know what? You do a heck of a lot more than that, don't you?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Well,
I'll come back to the Builders Club in a minute for sure for you.
All right. Well, I'm going to take myself right out of the picture, and I'm going to let you get right into it. And you can, it's your thing, Bruce. Do what you want to do.
No worries. All good. So we're going to go around to the, whoops, I don't want to do that. Push the wrong silly button. We're going to go to the front camera. So like all good clubbies, the best thing to do is to sit in your car and pretend even though it's nowhere near drivable. So this is my Locost. When I say mine, it's actually a man called Brian. Unfortunately, Brian passed away a year and a bit ago, and I purchased this from his wife. And I'm sure most of us have all spent a lot of time sitting in, shifting gears, pretending that we can actually get these things to go. So this is a good old low-cost build, straight out of that book that you showed us a couple of minutes ago there, Jim. It's
yes.
I picked this up. It came with most of the stuff wasn't put together, but he's obviously put it in quite a number of times. So it's got coilovers, all the other good things. This is a Toyota twin cam 2-litre 4AGE. Yep. So I'm looking for a number plate called Brian 4 Ages if I can get it, because that'll be a nice pun on the respect for Brian and also for the bits and pieces. So I picked this up. Funny enough, they advertised it when Brian was around for 9,000, and I was so close. If I hadn't been into my other car for 11,000, I would have bought this as an absolute no-brainer. Came with Toyota T50 gearboxes, 2 of those, and it's got good old banjo rear end differential in it, and there's in fact I think 3 of those sitting outside in the shed as well. That's a rubbish old steel wheel, but I've got these old things called ROH, which are made by a company called Onga. Not a particularly good photo of that, but I like those because they were the wheels that were around when I was a kid, and I thought, hey, why not? You got to do some good things. So about all I've done in this build at the moment is I've done the steering rack, which basically is built like the Sydney Harbour Bridge and probably a bit over-engineered, but I know that it will add some structural strength to the front. And the problem we have, obviously, in Western Australia is the torsional rigidity. It's basically a 4,000 Newton metre for 1 degree twist of the frame. So they shove a couple of hundred kilos on the front, a metre out from the front of your front bracket here, and they measure the torsional body twist at the end.
Yes.
And if it doesn't meet those requirements, then they don't pass your vehicle. So this has got most of the stuff. Brian's been working on this since 2006 because I went through, and I think he was onto his 5th or 6th license. You get a license or a permit from the DOT, which we'll talk about later on, and that lasts for 2 years. I think he was on his 5th one of those, unfortunately, because his health kept getting in the way of it. So, yeah, so this was the, what did I put on my MEV Sonic side? I put, what do you do when you're trying to get a car built? You buy another one just to really get in the way. The only things that I've actually done, apart from that front steering rack, I also over-engineered the mounting bracket that they're only just sitting there. There's no doubt about that. I over-engineered this bracket here, and my roll bar is that is duct tape there. This is a piece of what we call poly pipe, and I think it's a bit of industrial irrigation pipe sitting there across it at the moment. So I haven't actually. I've only put that in place just to start mocking out. Brian had already done all the fuel tank and all those sort of things, and I placed these coilovers. So there's a fair bit on that one still to do. To get this license, it still needs quite a few more plates and so forth in on the framework here. He was very good enough to have gone and bought a brand new set of Wilwood pedal brackets. So for $2,000, everybody can see out there that was an absolute bargain. So I'm in the process, those other bits of pipe down here, I'm in the process of trying to line up my steering so I can get some brackets made up for that and get the steering rack going. I was originally, when I bought this, trying to do that one and the other one, which I'm about to show you right now, as a pair, but I realised that, and the bad thing about it is that the Locost clubby here looks closer to being a roller. If I got a wheel for the shiny metal hub over the back there, which I have got a wheel, I just haven't put it on. If I put that on there, I could push it out of the driveway basically and push it around the yard. I could connect the tail shaft and probably even get it to drive. You know, it's one of those silly things. But there's hundreds of hours of bodywork to go on it, which I don't really have the time for just now. So I've decided I wouldn't do both of these as a pair. I would go back and do my pride and joy, which is hopefully the view in the window in the background is not too bright. Now, it does have a number plate on the front, but trust me, that is one that I found on the road. I just wanted to make sure that I set up the brackets. So when I bought this car, the guy who was importing them was building the frames actually in Western Australia because the frames from England were nowhere near compliant. They're made out of inch by inch, 25 by 25 mil steel, and this frame here is basically being made out of 50 by 25. So I'll show you a bit more, a few photos in a minute. I'll just walk around just for now. So yeah, he basically decided he would build the frames here and just import the bodies from MEV in. Well,
that's
England.
what I was going to ask. I mean, that's Southam, I believe, engineering, and I was going to ask, do they import the space frame, or is it just the plastic that he's brought along?
He's just bringing in the the fiberglass plastic frames and the body. Oh, sorry, the body and the roll bar is a MEV product. What else is he bringing in? Oh, I think he actually gets the coilovers and those sort of things. So he brings in the stuff that comes in the kit, everything other than the frame. So, yeah, and the back number plate is actually one off a bit of junk out in the yard out here that my father-in-law, that's his old trailer number plate. So I just put them on there just to make sure I didn't do silly things like put the lights and that sort of stuff in a place that eventually I have to go and put a number plate in. So I've tried to do those sort of things.
Trust me, I know. I've actually, I'm guilty enough of cutting a hole into some of the fiberglass on mine when I was building it and needed to fill it in and bondo it and sand it and paint it. So I do know you have to be careful.
For sure. So now we can just go in and show you a few other things. Now these, for those people who don't know, MEV plan. Just trying to hook that up there because I don't have a bonnet catch at the moment. Okay, so let me show you what I just did. Just open that up. These are based around, you basically go and buy the complete kit from the UK distributor. And if you're over in England, you go and buy a Mark 1 Ford Focus, which I think is up to about 2004 or 5 or something like that. You take the Focus home and you pull all the bits out and you put them into this, and they reckon you can do it in 130 hours or something like that. I spent probably 300 hours making brackets, so I don't know how they can possibly...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that sounds a little bit light, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do have one of these that I've... a friend of mine has driven in Western Australia. He's got one exactly the same as this. He put his son bought him a turbocharger, so he turbocharged it. He spent a year. He was fully retired. And he'd also built a clubby before, so he had lots of experience, and he's put that together. So... you know, that's where that is. I'm in the middle of just now getting things to bolt together. I've got wiring lying around. I've actually hidden a fair bit of it today, so you don't see it. You know, once again, I spent some time, tail lights here, but I made up the aluminium bracket. I stopped welding because my welding is very touch and go. If you TIG weld, anybody who knows who've done any TIG welding knows that unless you spend a lot of time doing it all the time, it's fraught with danger. The exhaust manifold here, I've actually flipped it around because previously this engine, this would have been the firewall right here on the Focus. Yes. And this went underneath the firewall. So now that I've changed it around, I had to change the direction of the catalytic converter. So I bent that, and I've just started down here. There's a little crack here. I've just been fixing up the welding. So I completely changed the design of that. And my original brief for my thing, when I spent the car that was sitting out here, the red one I showed you before, so I've got a photo over here. When for everybody else who's watching, I'll give you a quick get out where the light's better. So directly outside of this was originally that car sitting right out here where the other two cars are here at the moment. Yeah. That was delivery day, and
there's your MEB and there's your Focus.
That's right. And interesting enough, the wheelbase and everything else is obviously the width-wise is exactly the same. It's not that far away from the actual length of the Focus as well. So you'd expect it to handle pretty darn close to the original car. Just take out 400 kilos worth of what I'd call irrelevant sideways stuff called safety material. And all of a sudden you've got a car that's reasonably good. So yeah, the whole transaxle, everything else just fits straight into here. It's really good. And then all you have to do is to do all the suspension bits. Might as well show you this side. So at the moment, my issue is, putting that down on the ground, is to measure the length of that, stick it in there, take out the old bearing out of that, put that bearing onto that plate there. In fact, not take that bearing out. Yes. Take the bearing out, but rebuild a bearing carrier for in here. And then get everything to line up and do all those sort of things. So, and this bit of metal here is nowhere near strong enough. If you look at on any of the decent ME sites,
doesn't look too chunky.
Yeah, no, they've got a whole lot of extra bracing they put onto there. Interesting enough, there are a few people around, guaranteed, that are running that as a straight piece of metal, which is barely 5 mil, on their cars. I guarantee you could probably find dozens of them that have just gone, not even put any structural strength into that whatsoever. Hopefully there's not too many racing with that sort of a setup, but certainly there'd be quite a few. And I've done silly things like I've got an additional firewall, so that aluminium plate over the back here runs all the way down the bottom. That's actually double-sided. So I'll just close that because it looks better with a boot shut. Engine mount. That engine mount there is actually an old suspension component that I completely re-engineered. The one on the other side is actually the original engine mount. That's not so bad. Get that out of the way at the moment. And a good friend of mine in the club said, don't worry about the body fitment. It's a fiberglass thing. If anybody can get any fiberglass to ever fit, then they're doing better than he is. And he's a body specialist. Getting seats was an absolute nightmare because they, one, have to be compliant. And funny enough, I took in, there's a 30 centimetre disc or something you put down here on the seat, and it's got to measure to a certain height for head clearance and all these other silly things. When I was in the shop doing that, and it was a shop that's been around for a long time, the lady there said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, the rules say you have to have all these measurements made on your seats before you can put them in." She said, "Well, nobody's ever done that." And I said, "That's because most people just shove the seats in." No, they did leave the original compliant seats in, go and get a license and then come home and pull the seats out. And I said, I didn't want to do it. I want to have a car that's licensed with everything legal and everything else. So I've gone to a fair bit of trouble to make sure. I even re-engineered the Focus mirrors. Could have gone and got any one of a dozen bike mirrors that were lighter, smaller, everything else. Piece of steel I made up here. Got about 15 different angles in it. Anybody's ever tried to get many different angles to get it? But the reality is, I vowed that I would use as much of my son's Focus, because I did pay him $3,500 for it. I decided I would use an absolutely much as that as I possibly could. So you can see the spaghetti wiring nightmare. I actually put a piece of metal on the floor here just to actually look like it had a floor in it, although the one on the other side obviously doesn't. So yeah, that's where we're at. Front end's getting better. My daughter said, yeah, that's pretty good. I actually made up the bracket here to bolt the motorbike lights on the end of it. I still not sure about clearances, but everything else looks all right. Same thing. The bracket underneath the thing there. Most of the other Sonics on this planet, in fact, all bar one I've seen in New Zealand, actually do not do this. They don't open up this way. In fact, I've just got to click inside, I think. Put on fiberglass. Let's get that up to there. So nearly all of them do not, just get that glare out of the way, do not open this way up here. And it's because of the silly wedging bit here. So most of them just push back about 2 or 3 centimetres. They have a bar going across here, and then they just pivot up on that bar. And they just have at the end of this over here, where I've got some engine, what do you call it? Hinges that I put into here. There's a whole structural thing. I put a whole metal plate in there. Most people do not do that. They just put a couple of press fit engine bonnet clips there, and you know, they just lock them and so forth. But I decided to do things silly. What I'm trying to do at the moment, this is not in exactly the right spot. So anybody out there says it's not in the right spot, you're right, it's not. It's close, but I've just been mucking around with the radiator. A friend of mine said, here's a radiator. He's got a 2-litre Z-Tech that has been running on that radiator. He said it should be fine. I've just been taking the old Ford Focus. Let me put it on the ground so it's a bit easier to see. Taking the good old Ford Focus fan, which I cut about double off because that used to only cover half the fan. Yeah. And my son also happened to leave out in the driveway a dishwasher, which I cut down and used the front panel of the dishwasher. So that's actually where that's at. There's the radiator, basically. So I also, contrary to everybody else on the planet, this is the complete old set of brakes and everything else out of clutch, the whole mechanism. I made up a complete set of brackets. I trimmed them down and been welded them. So I'm using the original Ford Focus pedal set. Why? Because I can. I haven't even. I put in place a power brake booster there. I'm not even sure that I'm going to use that at the moment. It's just there, just putting in place. So the good news is it's, you know, it's getting close. I vowed, like all good things, bit of a list man occasionally. So I listed here, you see in the back of my book, it runs for a couple of pages. When I first did this, there was 155 jobs in here. I did it about 2 months ago.
Oh my God.
The good news is I've cut that down now to about 140 odd. But some of those are just buy something or get something or do something. I know. One of those is also completely strip the body and paint it, and completely strip the frame and paint that. So 2 of those jobs probably are more than just a 2-hour job. But the reality is I've listed all those jobs because they're really, really important. Okay, so there's a shed. My first bike up the back there. As I said, this was my father-in-law's shed. He used to be in the market gardening. He used to import fruit grading equipment from Holland. There's the nose cone. I'm getting pretty good with the fuel tank in the Sonic, which is basically there standing on its side. So that's
it's the same jazz cell I've got.
Then I've got to put that, because that's in my cabin. The rules say here you have to have it completely insulated from the rest of the cabin. So I've now basically built another fuel tank around it, although that's only made out of some of it's 1 mil, 1.6, and some of it's 3 mil. So that's going in the cabin. That then goes inside of that, and away we go. And there's bits and bobs that I'm actually getting better, and I've started to label all the crates and things lying around, plus everything else that my father-in-law's ever had in his shed, which I've tried to compact back into a bit less space. All right.
Well done. You've taken me, I don't know if it's good or bad, but you've taken me back about 15 years to my own build. It took me back to a time where, and we were talking about this just before we went live. It's you're going through your list, and I went through the same list, and it's like you run in, you come face to face with a mountain, and you reach that point where you just like, give me some energy so I can take another step forward. And I'm really glad that you responded to the email I sent you, because I think I may have actually helped you move along.
Yeah, no, it's good. And as I said to you just before you went on air, that the good news is that, and that's what I'll then get onto the Builders Club. Just trying to find a spot where there's put it over here, probably the best way, where I have less background lighting issues.
Yeah, that's good there.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing, why would I bother? It's an accountability to myself. It's accountability to, getting what I've said that I want to do. Because like all intentions that humans have, the minute we make some sort of a deal with ourselves, like a New Year's resolution, we actually get a warm fuzzy out of that New Year's resolution. You don't actually solve the problem that you're trying to solve. You just get a warm fuzzy out of it. Yeah. So the accountability, if you are going to tell people what your aspirations are, the accountability has to be really out there full time in your face, because otherwise it's very easy just to get a warm fuzzy and say, oh yeah, I'm building a kit car. Well, there's a guy in the club that's been building a kit car for, I think, 24 years. Eventually the warm fuzzies, well, maybe they don't ever wear out, I don't know. But the reality is, you've got to be in this, driving this, to get, and then you can always pull something off and fix something up again. But if I'm not in this, driving this soon, the motivation to continue in this very lonely activity of car building is likely to get in the way. So it's sort of, it's a bit of a,
it's almost, I would liken it to, it's almost like you feel like you've let yourself down. And if you come to that point, and if you don't make those lists, and if you don't even tick off that next one on the box, and go to go out to pick up a wrecked part that you're looking for, then it's easy to slip backwards.
Yeah. All right, so let's do a bit more on Sports Car Builders Club. So the good news is we've got 60 odd members in Western Australia, which is pretty good, because that means there's 60 good cars out there or in projects being built.
Yep.
We do, on the simplest form, we meet once a month in a club room, which is based by another sports car. So light car club meeting room. We just meet over there, sit around, look at the cars out in the car park for half an hour, have a meeting for half an hour, and then spend another hour talking about what we're doing and those sort of things to each other, just as a social. So it's really just a really informal social gathering. In fact, being the secretary now, I just plough through the agenda really quickly, and 30 minutes is a good meeting. Any more than that is too long. They're not interested in that. So the president and the secretary and a few other people tend to do all the main nitty-gritty type stuff, and everybody else just turns up and has a good time. And we've had 30% turnout, 35% turnout. So, getting 20 odd members to turn up to a meeting is pretty darn good. Okay, so that's the easiest bit, once a month. The next bit is whenever there's a fine day. That we didn't go out today because it's a bit thing, but normally this time here I'd be heading over to a friend's place, ready to get into his club at the moment and go for a drive somewhere. And we're going to have coffee, what we call coffee and lies. We go out and drive, 5Ks, 10Ks, 30Ks, 40Ks, depending on where people are going. Meet at a coffee shop, have a little bit of morning tea, a cup of coffee, and then come back home again and, sit around, do nothing for the rest of the day. Get into the shed and do what they've got to do. So that's the next bit. We've got members who we've also just organised in another month's time. We're taking out where spouses are welcome. We, try and get once or twice a year, 20 or 30 of us together with our partners to try and, make this group a little bit more social, a little bit wider spread, rather than just the boys having a coffee every second Sunday. And so we've got one of those coming up. We also have a Christmas function where we meet at the ex-president's place because it's 50 miles from my place, or it's about 42 miles from my place, but it's out in a bit of a rural area. So there's 3 or 4 people who've got clubbies they take down there, and anybody who's new can just get in that clubby and go for a drive around the street. So it's, you know, good enough you can go for a bit of a fang without going too far over the speed limit without chance of getting booked. So you can have a bit of fun down at Barry's place, which is a good thing we do once a year. And then just have a lunch and sit around and chat, and then we come home from that. And the last bit we're trying to do, we have done a few. We organise some sort of speed event. So we organise hill climb is one we've been done a couple of times. There's a couple of local towns that are quite happy to have clubs turn up to. We just went up to York a couple of weeks ago, and basically just took 10, 12 cars up there, park them in the car park. People walk past all day, say, what are you doing? How are you doing? A nice looking car and all those sort of good things as well. So there's lots of really good ways. There's a couple more of those. So we probably do 4 of those events a year where we just go and lob in somebody's car park. You know, it could be that they've got a fair on. One of those is a school that's running a fair, and they've just said, oh, we can get more people here if we have something good to look at. So they bring some nice cars in so they ask a few car clubs to turn up with their members. Stick up your flyer, and if you can attract some new members, then that's a good thing. And generally do those sort of publicity things. So that's what we do.
Can I ask you a quick question about the club? As I understand it from the Zoom meeting that I attended, it's more than just the social part and the I guess the building part, but you do take you're part of you've assisted the government in helping builders get their cars registered. Could you just comment on that for a moment?
Yep. The Department of Transport here, originally you could take 2 clubbies down on 2 consecutive days, and one would pass and one would fail, and the next day they both pass and the next day they both fail, depending on who was on duty, what their interpretation of the rules were, whether they liked the colour of it and all those sort of things. So we decided years ago, or the club decided years ago, that they would actually form with a brief of getting all of that sorted out. They worked with the Department of Transport to come up with a good set of guidelines and rules, and working out some negotiation about if one car follow exactly the same rules. So if you built a Locost exactly to the book, then and somebody else had their car passed, then technically if all your welds were compliant and you had an engineer sign off on those, then you could get through on that same compliance. And that's been a really big step here, because it means better for them, because they don't have to go through and do all the testing for every single car. But yeah, so to work with the Department of Transport to come up with a consistent set of rules, we've actually got a booklet we produced for ourselves, which we make available to our members, that you can go through and have a look and start ticking off things to make sure that you are compliant. So it's been a really good thing trying to negotiate. We've actually had some of the DOT, not the engineers from them so much, but the other people who are in the workshop down there doing the compliance testing, that actually, you know, take part in the club, and we quite frequently get in touch with them just to see where we're at and where they're at, to make sure that those rules and those, you know, because we want safe cars, but we don't want to have safe cars that have to go through absolute hurdles to try and prove to somebody else that they are safe cars, because nobody would drive a car that's not safe. You'd be stupid to do that. So, yeah, so working with the Department of Transport was a really important part. And as I said, we've hopefully kept that going. And that was a really good part for the reason why the club did form. And the information that I'm trying now is to get all the wisdom that our good car builders are doing, and actually make that available to a whole lot of other people. So once again, like interviews like this, and also with our other members who have been around for years, to try and make sure that we all know what we're trying to do is good.
Well, that's just awesome. Bruce, it just sounds like we just started, but really we're almost at the half an hour. And I know you said you like to keep them short and sweet. So I'm going to bring myself back into the picture. And here we go. There's me and there's you. But I wanted to say thank you on behalf of 7 Spot, because, you know, this is fabulous. I find the journey as rewarding as the finished product. I mean, we all love our cars, but you know what? I will say myself, you know, I had never built a car before. I just had 2 young boys who wanted to go to trade school, and I thought, well, let's build a car. And it worked out well for them, and it was a wonderful experience for me. So I thank you very much for sharing your passion and sharing your 2 cars that you've got on the go. And also, we're going to post up on 7 Spot your coordinates, meaning the club details. And because I do know that we've got other folks from Australia, and if they're at all in Western Australia and need to get some consultation, I want them to be able to reach out to you. So on that point, I am going to say, Bruce, thank you so very much from all of us at 7 Spot. And Bruce, I think you faded out. But anyways, folks, that was it. I'm going to say ciao for now, and we will see you at 7 Spot. Cheers.